We had a major catastrophe this weekend. Good morning, and hello from Blooming Health Farms, and thank you for being with me on this beautiful day. The sun is rising earlier, it's just now March, and I celebrated my 39th birthday on March 1st. And it's been a long journey. I never actually expected to make it this far and see some of the things that I've seen, the trials, the tribulations. One of those trials actually just happened recently. Our air pump in our aquaponics system went out, and as a result, all of our fish died. So I thought I would just talk to you a little bit about the challenges that has caused us and some of the solutions that we've used in the past, so this doesn't happen as catastrophically as it does in the past, or as it did just recently, and the takeaway of the idea of creating redundancy in a hydroponics operation. When I first started doing aquaponic research, I was tasked with overseeing a small system in this tropical greenhouse in Manoa Valley. And I remember one day going there in the afternoon and doing what I thought I was supposed to. And then I went home, back to my apartment, came back to check on the experiment the next morning, and I found that all of my fish were dead. I had killed 100 of my professor's fish, and I was absolutely devastated. And I learned upon investigation that the air pump went out and had siphoned all of the water out of the fish tank, and the fish suffocated. So I got to learn really quick the challenges and pitfalls of becoming an aquaculturist. I remember being so devastated that I told my graduate student who was overseeing, or the graduate student who was overseeing me at the time, her name is Kiara, I said to her, "Oh my goodness, I just ruined Harry's experiment. I left the air pump on the ground and it back siphoned." And she goes, "Yeah, how many fish died?" And I said, "I killed both of the experiments. It's about 100 fish." And she goes, "Oh, well, that's nothing. You're not a real aquaculturist until you kill 1,000,000 fish." And I looked at her and my heart just stopped for 1 second. She goes, "Let me tell you about a mistake I made while at a salmon hatchery." And Kiara began to tell me how her first huge setback was when she accidentally destroyed a raceway of 1,000,000 baby salmon, 1,000,000 smolts. And I was able to take that lesson in perspective and learn that some of these things happen, but we need to do our best to not allow them to happen again. Well, let's fast forward to what happened just the other day. I am running an aquaponics system on a very small scale, and we are using an IBC tote to house all of our tilapia. An IBC tote is one of those international bulk containers. They ship liquids in them, and it's one of those big kind of semi-clear totes with those metal cages around it. It's very, very practical and cost efficient for aquaponics, and it's very easy to plumb in and move around. Well, we're using only one IBC tote, and then we have a couple other smaller tanks, a sump, an AST biofilter, and then our grow beds. Well, inside of our fish tank, we have an air pump. I use the Halia Super Silent Power Air Pump, which is an off brand that I get from Pentair Aquatic Ecosystems. And I love these pumps because they're really, really effective, and they're really affordable. There's very, very, very few moving parts. It's just a diaphragm pump. So I buy these in pairs. I buy them in twos whenever I buy a pump, and I put them in the fish tank in tandem, meaning I hook up both air pumps to the system and plug them both in so that both air pumps are on. Now, about 6 months ago, one of those air pumps went down, and I mistakenly did not buy another one or add another air pump to the system, and just let this pump go alone. And one of the reasons is that I have seen these air pumps just go like gusto for 3-4 years without any problems. So I slightly overlooked that this pump may be an aging pump. So the pump died just suddenly, and the air going into our fish tank stopped. Now, that is a huge problem, specifically because we are running such a small operation. We don't have a lot of water to buffer that mistake, meaning there's only so much oxygen in our water, and when that air pump went out, our fish and the bacteria rapidly consumed all of the oxygen and they died off. Now, I know the fish died because we could see them all starting to float on the surface, but for those of you out there that may not be as robust in aquaponics, in general, the bacteria will consume oxygen before the fish. So the bacteria were being oxygen hogs. They probably sucked out almost all of the oxygen, and the fish suffered. We've seen that qualitatively at around 3 milligrams to 2 milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen. At about that level, that's when we start to see the bacteria are going to dominate everything else. And so Junior and I got to scoop a bunch of dead fish off the top of our water, and I got to explain to him some of those sciencey things and the reasons why it did what it did. Now, to put it in a little bit more context, our tilapia were being used mostly as our bioreactor, meaning they were making our fertilizer. And so in our system, we had fish that were significantly bigger than what you would put on someone's plate. They were almost 18 inches long. And no, I'm not doing the fish story where my hands are way bigger than the actual size of the fish. For those of you that have seen, you know these fish were huge, and we had quite a few of them in there. So unfortunately, it broke my heart. And so thankfully, our client up in Wyoming was able to give us a few fish, and we are now getting our water quality back under control so that we can put the fish into our system. There's some differences in water quality between the system up in Wyoming and the system here. We're at a slightly more acidic pH, whereas he is at an alkaline pH. The takeaway from that is that I have to acclimate our fish to our water conditions or change the water chemistry that we have in our system. So I'm doing a little bit of both. We're doing a 50% water change. I'm basically dumping out half the water that went quote unquote sour onto our garden, onto the composting area, and then we'll put tap water in here, and that will help us get a more similar water quality to what those fish are used to. There's something that we like to say in the water treatment world: the solution to pollution is dilution. And as you can imagine, a tank full of floating fish likely causes the water to foul up. So we are kind of getting our start back up with our fish. Now, one of the really amazing things that when these types of setbacks happen in an aquaponics system is that we're able to recover extremely quickly because of our biofilter, because of the bacteria in our system. The bacteria live on almost every single surface area, and so the bacteria are in areas where they're going to almost always have access to oxygen, that subsurface water. And so the bacteria will very quickly take the ammonia waste from the new fish and turn them into the nitrate that our tomatoes here are just loving. We have a bunch of tomato clones getting ready. My red velvet, which is an heirloom tomato that I'm actually selling starters for $50 a start. So we are still good to go from a crop production and system overall health perspective because of some of these things. But the big takeaway today is that these types of things in hydroponics operations can happen. Your air pumps can go out, other mechanical devices can go bad, and it likely will happen when it's inconvenient for you. It happened to me in junior overnight, so we didn't even see the pump go out. I didn't hear an alarm go off on any of that, and yeah, so we were also extremely occupied by the influx of 400 chicks coming to our farm. So those are things that happen when you're managing a business, when you're managing a farm. So we must do our best in our operations to create as much mechanical redundancy as possible and redundancy in other places. But because we have an air pump failure, I figured it was apropos to talk to you about the things you can do to save yourself those stresses. So go out, take a look at your hydroponic system and look at the components that you've got in your system. What components do you have and how can you get duplicates of those components? Now maybe they're not the exact same component, maybe you are doing things differently, but go out and create that redundancy in your hydroponic system so that you can continue to be successful, so that if you have plants or animals in your system that you can recover and move forward, much like we're still able to grow our chicken feed and these amazing tomato plants. But that is all I have for today. Head on over to thinkingoutsidethesoil.com to get yourself a copy of my book so you don't miss out on becoming part of this next agricultural revolution. Thank you again for being with me on another episode of Thinking Outside the Soil. Take care and have a lovely day. Hey, before you go, check out the links below. And if you'd be so kind as to leave a rating and review and follow the show. For those with feathered friends, don't forget to get yourself some of our Blooming Health Farms Chicken Blend Sprouting Mix. This supplemental mix has been shown to give you some of the best eggs with the yummiest yolks. You'll have happy, healthy hens that abandon the feeder and give you eggs with high levels of vitamin A and omega fatty acids. So don't forget to get yourself some Blooming Health Farms Chicken Blend Sprouting Mix.